Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's so nice to have you all here. I'm going to let a few more people trickle in via the internet. As everyone comes in, I just want to say, again, thank you so much for being here. We're really excited to have you all. At the bottom of your screens, if you are on a laptop, you will see a Q&A button. We're going to explain that a little bit more later, but that's going to be how you get questions to us. And you can also send me an email if there's anything that you need tech support help with. I've put the email in the chat for everyone. Great. As people arrive, a few things to note. This is the first Zoom webinar that Tarragon has gotten to do, which is really exciting. But it also means that there's lots of it that's really new for us, and we're learning as we go. So please be patient if there are things that we need to figure out as it happens. I also want to remind everyone, because this event is happening on the internet, sometimes there are hiccups. Sometimes connection speeds are slow, or things just get lost a little bit because it's man-made and it makes mistakes just like the rest of us. If there are any internet hiccups or there's any pause, please take it as a welcome to breathe and wait, and everything will catch up soon, I promise. Take a moment to get comfortable. We're going to be here with you for about an hour. We want to make sure that everyone has a good cup of water or tea and is sitting in a nice, comfortable spot to hear our fantastic speakers today. Before we start, we want to acknowledge that we are gathering in many different places and in a really different way. This medium often invites us to be disembodied and not engaged with where we are physically in any given moment. And one way that we wish to disrupt this and counteract the colonial and capitalist ideologies we've inherited is to speak to the original and displaced caretakers of the lands that we're on today. Please take a moment to root yourself, take a breath, and reflect on the following questions. It's okay if your answer to any of the following questions is "I don't know." Simply make a note and think about following up on it after the event today. We recommend using the resources native-land.ca or whos.land as a starting point for your learning, though it is not a final or a definitive source for this work. Please think about, where are you? What is the original or traditional name for this land? What nations are or were displaced so that you might reside there? What, if any, treaties apply to the land and therefore apply to your presence on it? The presenters and the facilitators today are joining you from 5 different locations across the globe. Each of us have our own relationship with the land and the nations of these places. We would like to acknowledge and thank the following nations for our presence on their ancestral lands: the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Wendat, the St. Lawrence Iroquoians, the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, the Squamish, the Nawa, the Mapuche, the Diaguita, the Aymara. Lastly, we want to acknowledge that there have often been nations and people who have cared for these lands that have gone unrecorded or unrecognized. Thank you so much for taking a moment to acknowledge the lands that we're gathering on across the world. I am going to invite Courtney Chung Lancaster, a colleague of mine at Tarragon, to come into the space now to do a welcome and an introduction to our artists.
Thank you so much for that land acknowledgement and introduction, Danielle. And thank you all so much for being here. Danielle, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? Oh, I presume she would have said something if she couldn't. I have the wonderful honor of introducing Paula Zelaya Cervantes and Bruce Gibbons Fell, two incredible artists and prolific artists. First of all, I'd love to invite Paula to enter the video space with me so that I can talk about you. So, Paula is a Mexican playwright, screenwriter, director, and translator. She is a graduate of the University of British Columbia and a recipient of the prestigious International Leader of Tomorrow Award, granted to only 13 students worldwide each year. Paula wrote and directed The Orb Weaver, or El Irador, which was awarded an Efiteatro, the Mexican Institute of Fine Arts' most prestigious production grant for theater, as well as the Vancouver Fringe Critics' Choice Award for Best Play and Cartelera de Teatro's awards for Best Playwriting, Best Direction, Best Production Design, and Best Play, along with the Premio Metropolitano de Teatro for Best Movement and Choreography. Other playwriting and directing credits include Sasha and Spot, which was also awarded an Efiteatro grant, and 245 Acts of Unspeakable Evil, which she co-wrote with Ana González Bello, and which premiered off-Broadway in 2017, and which will open in Mexico City in February 2021. That play won the Latino National Playwright Award, the Sharon Enkin Play for Young People Award, along with one of 5 scholarships for the development of TV series and miniseries granted by the Mexico National Cinematography Institute. With Diego del Rio, Paula also co-translated and co-adapted Tennessee Williams' The Glass Menagerie and co-adapted David Lindsay Abere's Good People. Other translation credits include Noah Hadel's Rag and Bone, The Humans by Stephen Karam, Sam Steiner's Lemons, 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 Dennis Kelly's Girls and Boys, Neil Bartlett's Or You Could Kiss Me, Will Eno's Tom Paine, and Robert Icke's and Duncan Macmillan's adaptation of George Orwell's 1984, Simon Stevens' Heisenberg, Margaret Edison's Pulitzer Prize-winning play Wit, and more. Paula recently directed and translated the work of Tarragon playwright-in-residence Hannah Moscovich. Little One, or Bichito, is presently mid-run and is streaming in Spanish every Tuesday night until, I believe, October 27th. Is that right, Paula?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, awesome. I'm going to put a link into the chat so that you can all check it out. And next, Paula will be translating and directing Nia Vardalos' Tiny Beautiful Things for Teatro Milan. So let me stick that link in there while I'm thinking about it. Thank you so much for being here, Paula.
Thank you, Courtney. Thank you for the invitation.
And I would now like to invite Bruce Gibbons Fell. Bruce Gibbons Fell is an award-winning playwright and translator whose work has been showcased in Argentina, Canada, Chile, Cuba, the US, and the UK. Bruce studied law at Universidad de Chile and moved to Toronto in 2011, where his experience in translating theater began. In 2014, he curated and presented staged readings of Rosa Laborde's Leo, Carmen Aguirre's The Refugee Hotel, and Blue Box. And those were presented in Chile's Museum of Memory and Human Rights in a play reading cycle about Chilean exile. In 2015, he was part of Aluna Theater's interpretation lab and resident at Playwrights Workshop Montreal and in Tadoussac. That year, Bruce participated in the adaptation and the Cuban premiere of Michel Tremblay's Les Belles Sœurs. His translation of Guillaume Courbet's Nous voir nous had its premiere in Cuba in 2017. For Tarragon Theater, Bruce created subtitles for Rosa Laborde's Marine Life and translated Abyss by Maria Milosavljevic for its upcoming Chilean production. Among his favorite translations, Santiago High Tech by Cristian Soto, Estado Vegetal by Manuela Infante, play excerpts for Women Playwrights International, Boca de Lupo's Red Phone, which included playlets by Toronto-based playwrights Susanna Fournier and Keith Barker, and most recently the Chilean premiere of The Christians by Lucas Nath. Bruce also works in creating surtitles for international theater festivals and translating film and TV scripts. As a playwright, Bruce's work in Canada has been showcased at the Summer Works Performance Festival, Aluna Theater's Caminos, and the Rhubarb Festival. And from 2016 to 2018, he was artist in residence at Buddies in Bad Times Theater with his upcoming play, The Communist Manifesto for Children. In Chile, Bruce has won the Chilean National Playwriting Competition, one of the country's highest recognitions for playwrights. He recently presented a workshop production of his play Capuletto in Santiago, an interactive revisioning of Romeo and Juliet, exploring the privileged body on stage in contrast with the now cancelled poet Pablo Neruda's translation of Shakespeare's text. Bruce is currently the Director of New Play Development at Interdram in Chile and is Director of Residencia Dinamo, an international playwriting residency. Thank you so much for joining us today, Bruce.
Thanks, Courtney.
Is it just the worst listening to me talk about both of you and your accomplishments at length like that?
It's an interesting experience.
Yeah, for sure.
You handled it with such grace. Thank you. I also want to invite our question and answer space maker for this event, Angie Descalzi, to join this space with us. Angie joins us from CalTech, the Canadian Latinx Theatre Artist Coalition, which they are our partners on this event, and we're so grateful that you've come on board to help us with this. Angie is a producer, a theater lover, an arts administrator, and the education manager at Carousel Theatre in Vancouver. Angie, if you could you tell us a little bit about what CalTech is?
Yes, thank you, Courtney. Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. So CalTech basically was born because we wanted to be seen. This awesome group of Latinx artists from Vancouver decided that we wanted to really advocate, network, and celebrate Latinx theater in Canada. One of the things that we decided to do as a first thing is this database of Latinx performers, designers, producers, so that it can exist for Canadian theater companies. So the good old excuse of we could not find the right Latinx person for the part no longer exists. So that is something that we started in Vancouver. Of course, we want to move this into all the major cities in Canada that have major theater companies. And we also want to constantly, continuously advocate for all our artists as well as our allies. Really exciting partnerships have been, of course, Tarragon Theatre with this event. We're so excited to be able to help with this. We're also talking to Aluna Theatre about this database so that we can have artists from Toronto join as well. And we've partnered also with another company called Culture Brew, which is a local Vancouver organization that does very much the same thing, but for more BIPOC artists. It's a more surrounded database for different kinds of people of color. So that's what we do, and we want to continue to do that for as long as we can.
Thank you so much. It's a wonderful and really exciting initiative. I am soon to depart from your screen as currently the only non-Spanish speaker on the screen. But I do want to say first off in English that we will be taking questions both in English and in Spanish. The conversation is intended to be a sort of flexible bilingual conversation between Paula and Bruce. And then Angie will join us at about the 20-30 minute mark, depending on how things are going, and we'll bring some of the questions to our wonderful playwrights and translators. So the way you would do that is if you'll see on the bottom of your Zoom screen, there should be a little icon that says Q&A with two little comment graphics. If you wish to ask a question at any point during this webinar, you would just click there and enter your question in either language, and Angie will bring those to our artists later on in the day. I am going to step back now, and Angie, before we leave it to Paula and Bruce, perhaps you could also talk about CalTech in Spanish as well, in case there's any predominantly Spanish speakers watching today who might want to hear about it. Thank you so much, folks.
Thank you, Courtney. Gracias. Sí, entonces CalTech, bueno, en inglés es la Canadian Latinx Theatre Artists Coalition. Estamos aquí para apoyar a artistas latinoamericanos. Hemos creado una base de datos donde los artistas pueden poner si son actores, diseñadores, productores, para poder, o sea, la base de datos es para ofrecer a las compañías canadienses para que puedan utilizarla y encontrar artistas latinoamericanos, para que la excusa de es que no pude encontrar el actor latinoamericano o el diseñador latinoamericano para esta obra latinoamericana ya no exista. Estamos también expandiendo esta base de datos en Toronto con la Luna Theater y obviamente tenemos este tipo de eventos como con Tarragon Theater aquí para poder apoyar a los artistas latinoamericanos como Bruce y como Paula. Así que estamos emocionados de estar aquí y apoyar con translation. Vamos a tener un poco de Spanglish aquí. Sigan ustedes, muchas gracias.
Gracias, Angie.
Gracias. Okay.
Let me just pin you. There we go. Now I can see you.
I see you.
There we go.
So, do you want to start or?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I was just wondering, because I read your bio, and one of the things that I had a question was, it's a really like silly, simple question, but I wanted to know, do you mostly translate from Spanish into English or English into Spanish?
I mostly translate into English.
Right.
Right now.
Okay.
Just because in Chile, there are not many playwrights that do that. That would be
right.
In terms
so you
of
don't usually take plays from outside of Chile, but instead translate Chilean plays for an audience outside of.
It's quite a mix, but lately it's been into English. But yeah, no, we did The Christians by Lucas Nath, which is a play from the States. And we got some support from the North American Institute of Culture, who secured our funds right before Trump was elected, which was fantastic, because we wouldn't have been able to do it.
No, probably not.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, in my experience, I've done like, I would say half and half, but lately it's been to English, which is torture.
I've never done that. That's why I'm asking, because I always translate from English to Spanish. I've never, like not a play. I've done a lot of translation for like different things, but never a play. So that must be like an interesting experience. I guess it kind of the same but in reverse, but I don't know what it would feel like since I've never done it.
Yeah, English is a very, it's going to sound terrible what I'm going to say, not in the worst way possible, but it's a very uptight language. Grammatically, in terms of rhythm,
right.
It's spoken in a different way. Actors access things in their minds and bodies in a totally different way. So it's kind of like, I always say this as an example in translating, you have to kind of make the same dress for another body who's going to another party. And it makes me think, sometimes when I say this, I think about like prom night. You know, like in the movies, like in North America, like prom has like a lot of ruffles and stuff. And in Latin America, like proms are kind of non-existent, but sometimes they are. And like, it's a totally different
They're completely different, yeah.
Especially depending where you are in Latin America. So yeah, I guess it's kind of the way of like, I think the fabric is a bit tighter in English and a lot gets lost. I think humor can get lost easily, which is a big challenge.
I was talking to a friend the other day about Shrek, like the movie, and we were talking about how much better it is in Spanish just because of the sense of humor, right?
The Simpsons.
The Simpsons, yeah. I don't know.
I don't know the Simpsons very well, but.
Me neither, to be honest, but at least Shrek, with Shrek, yeah. I know that that's better. It's interesting you say it's a little tighter. I sometimes feel English can be a little less tight, like for example, verb use and the way that you can turn a noun into a verb easily. And that is something I really like when I'm writing in Spanish. I really miss not being able to do that because English is just, I can find that some of the things that it can do are a lot more flexible. I think it was, my dad always tells me this, I think it was Borges, the writer, who said that in Spanish, you can't laugh someone out of a room. You can't do that in Spanish. So it's interesting that, at least with the verb and noun use, I find that it's a lot more flexible, but it is a chunkier language. And the sense of humor works differently. It's interesting what you said about actors accessing emotions differently. Like, what do you mean by that?
So with the Luna Theater, we did this thing called Interpretation Lab, where we had bilingual actors, Canadian actors, and I was translator, dramaturg-ish thing. And we did a bunch of experiments. And when we'd perform a same text in Spanish in translation and in the original version in English, or the other way around, it was completely different. So we do all these exercises to kind of like calibrate their minds steering them to like translate out loud, and then suddenly like they became this like one thing. But yeah, it's very different. It's very different. It's also, English doesn't have usted.
Right, true.
So that's very difficult, because how do I kind of add that seniority? I mean, same as in Japan, like sama-chan, you know, like they have these different layers of like person who is above you in a certain like formal scale. So you have to work around that. English as well. I'm gonna say like a really weird example, but
Okay.
I was once told not to read Russian literature in English and read it in Spanish if I could, because Russian literature, among other things, is gendered, just like in Spanish. So you lose a lot of that. So there's a lot of words that are not gendered in English, and sometimes you have like the most perfect image, like García Lorca, la luna, como que pasas a decir the moon, y no es
And
lo
it's
mismo,
not,
porque
no.
no es femenino. Entonces pierde un poco esa textura. Entonces como how do you work around those things is pretty tough.
It's true.
Yeah.
The other day when we had our meeting, like our pre-meeting before this, I was telling you about this play that I translated. It's called Scorch by Stacey Gregg, and it's a British play, but it's about a transgender kid. And it was really, really hard to translate it into Spanish because of the gendered language, because in English you don't have that. And the playwright very pointedly avoided making any kind of reference to she, her, or he, him. And then in Spanish, you just have to. Most of the time you have to, because you can't conjugate a verb without doing that. So it was terrifying, because I felt really responsible for that. That kind of play doesn't really get translated much into Spanish, and I felt really responsible for the content.
How do you do it though?
What I did was I added a translator's note at the beginning, saying like I'm experimenting here. Whoever has better ideas should let me know. So what I tried was a few words I ended in AE. Como contento, OA, contento a, sometimes, like trying to get a feeling for maybe, and a few things I turned into the Spanish inclusive with todes, and so on.
Todes.
But I kind of did like a few different things, trying to merge it into a whole, because it's a play, right? It's not a document, like a formal document. So it has to have like a rhythm and a feeling to it. You can't just kill by turning it into something that it isn't. So it was really tough. It was really, really hard. And it's one of the things that English, you don't have to deal with that as much.
There's also like the more progressive Canada, which sometimes I call the future in terms of a lot of things when you're in Latin America and having certain discussions with artists.
Yeah.
Like I want my residency to have at least 50% women. And some people are like, but why? I'm like, why do I have to explain these things? But
exactly.
It also, there's a bit more of a social agreement around gender neutral pronouns. I know there's a lot of resistance and things are really bad. I'm not trying to say which part of the world is worse, but regarding, for example, calling someone they, them, and in Latin American say ella, but ella is not very common in Argentina. It's not very, like in the Southern Cone, as we'd say in South America, it's not very common. So how do you work around that? Then you have to say the person, or use the character's singular pronombre como el nombre sustantivo propio. Just be like, so Floyd walked here and Floyd did this, and like, you know, like
you find yourself repeating the name.
Just so like it's so hard. But yeah, I wanted to ask you something like super the other way around.
Okay.
Because you live in Mexico and your relationship as a Mexican artist with the US is probably different than a Chilean playwright, translator with the US. We have a lot of issues with the US. So like we're a little lab and experiment for all their neoliberal politics. Long story. Leo has a little bit to do with that. I can get to that later. But you translated Tennessee Williams, which makes me extremely jealous. Because we didn't get the rights for Sweet Bird of Youth, which I really wanted to translate.
Oh, wow.
So how this goes a bit more to like adapting and like cultural transcommunication. Like you're using a language of the South, which is very heavy, and you're taking it to Mexico. So what, like the first little question is, what did you do? Like, did it take place in the South, or did it take place in Mexico? And
no, it took place in the US. Like we didn't change
US.
that at all. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And what do you do like in terms of language? Because it has like that es tan particular como el, no sé.
Sí, el Southern Belle y esta cosa muy de esa zona de Estados Unidos, ¿no? It was hard. What we decided was a lot of the translations that exist of the Glass Menagerie are really, I was in a different interview and talked about this, really academic and bookish, and we didn't want that for this, because it's not a bookish play. It's really like grounded in real people and in a normal family. And what we wanted was for the audience here to have that same experience, but at the same time, we couldn't deny the fact that it is an American play. So what we did was we, especially with the character of Amanda, who has like the language is really over the top and really theatrical in a way. What we did was we tried to imitate how, and this is going to sound terrible, how our moms talk. So, and these really like, I don't know, like dichos y cosas así que dicen las mamás, just really exaggerated things that our moms say. Like if you come out late, to come back after a night out and you're coming back late, the kinds of things that they'll say are really exaggerated compared to like what maybe I would say. So what we tried to do was trying to copy some of mama language, trying to articulate it into something similar to what Amanda said, and just try to make the language really theatrical. So we couldn't keep the Southern feel to it, but we could try to make a difference between her and her kids just through the theatricality of it. It was really hard, but I think we did a good job of making sure that people didn't forget it was in the US, but still felt close to home. There was a lot of laughter, and it is a really funny play. For many parts of it are really funny. Yeah. And I think people laughing was a good sign that we kind of got the play through to the audience in a way that wasn't just like, oh, Tennessee Williams, but actually getting a feeling for the characters in the play. So yeah, that's what we did.
I saw a Chilean version of Streetcar, and it took place in New Orleans, but it was full Chilean low-class prison language, which is called Coa, which would be similar to Joal in Montreal. It's a way to explain it, really super, like just being super generalistic, super general, like not fine details. And it was super interesting. There's so much you can do like with that in terms of language. And I guess a lot of it, como decías, como has to go with word choice. And yeah, I guess, yeah, it's for me, it's a lot about the images, how to get them right. And
did that production, did it work? Did you feel? Because sometimes with adaptations, it did?
Yeah.
But with adaptations, I sometimes feel like if slang is too slangish, then people will feel like they're outside of the context of the play is implying, but then at the same time, it just helps people access.
It was a good way of like, como de meterse en el machismo latinoamericano, funcionaba mejor.
Yeah, claro.
It had, you know, like that was a bit of the, it was risky thing to do. But yeah, so what else was I going to ask you? You've translated a lot of Canadian plays.
Yeah, not that many Canadian plays. I think I've only ever done, or maybe I'm just forgetting one. I'm doing Christine Quintana's Clean, which is a brand new play. I'm just halfway through it at the moment. And then I did Little One, Hannah Moscovich. I think most of the plays I've translated are American. There's a big demand in Mexico City for American plays and American contemporary plays. So I get asked to do that a lot. You've done a lot of Canadian plays though. Most of them, right? Or
I've done quite a bit. I've done a bunch, I would say. I even like when I did like little excerpts for Women's Playwrights International, there were some Canadian works in there too. So yeah, a lot of Canadian work. Though like the three first that I did, they were about Chile. in a way. So it made kind of, sense.
Because these were Canadian plays about Chile, right? Like Leo,
yeah.
which is a play written by a Chilean-Canadian playwright, right? Yeah.
So yeah, we have Leo, which is about, these children that grow up right before the dictatorship, and then the dictatorship comes and one of them disappears, and there's all this like journey, coming of age situation with a lot of poetry. And then we have Carmen Aguirre's Refugee Hotel, which is a Canadian historical play about the first Chileans that arrived in Canada. And then there's a monologue by Carmen, it's called Blue Box, which I totally recommend. It's fantastic.
It must have been a really interesting experience translating something that is Chilean in its heart, but the language is not Spanish. And so like, what was it like? Was it, I don't know, I've never had that experience.
It was tons of fun because I got to, for Leo, for those 3 plays, I got to really get the feels de cómo hablaba la gente en los años 70 en Chile.
Claro.
Hablaban de una manera más correcta. Sí, era una manera como más bonita. Había como cierta inocencia en el lenguaje que era muy puro, porque estaban pasando por ciertos momentos y lo chilenicé. Lo primero que hice, chilenicé el po. ¿Cachai? No era común en esa época, pero no sé, pues cuando dicen la niña, dicen la cabra chica, porque nosotros las niñas les decimos cabras.
Okay.
Because we have a lot of animal ways to talk about people in Latin America, and they're so great. In Chile, a rooster is a man, a roosteress is a woman, a goat is a girl or a little boy, and you always add some little adjectives around them. So translating Chilean things about Chile was great, because I could really go in that direction and also access a generation before me.
That's really interesting.
But for them to work in Latin America and other countries, these translations, it's a little problem because it feels too Chilean.
Really?
For some people, they're like, what does this mean? And
right.
And it's not a bad problem, but it's one of those problems that need a solution. So there's ways of, so then came like an extra part, like another layer of how do we make this play have the ability to, pero que se entienda, que lo entienda la gente, porque de hecho Refugee Hotel se hizo una traducción, la traducción se publicó en México, se va a publicar en México. Todavía estoy esperando mis libros, pero claro, ahí tuvimos que reemplazar cosas. Pasa lo mismo con Leo, si hubiese tenido esa situación. Cuando alguien es medio gordito, en Chile, por decirlo así, te dicen guatón. Pero en otros países no dicen guatón. Entonces decían, bueno, que le digan el barriga. Pero en Chile nadie dice eso. Entonces, la única conexión del señor Barriga es el Chavo del Ocho, lo único que conocemos es esa palabra. Entonces vienen todos esos como problemas porque tú también quieres comunicar la obra y además no es una obra, por decirlo, chilena, es una obra canadiense.
Claro.
Entonces, como...
Sí, en México esto de la cabra y demás, o sea, no habría forma de que lo entendiéramos. So what did you do in the end?
I did a little mix. I negotiated with myself and also, yeah, because you want, I mean, in Canada, like we are the Latinx community, everybody comes from everywhere, you know? I mean, I'm saying everybody comes, like that terrible question where you say people like, where are you from?
Where are you from?
Not in that sense, but like your family or you were born somewhere else or like your roots are different. So you do have to, you know, like calibrate that situation as well. And what do you think about rhythm? What's your thoughts? Because I'm thinking about Chilean words, cabra, no sé qué. Like, los chilenos hablamos muy rápido. Como si yo te digo más o menos la guay que estoy pensando, ¿cachai? Como que me voy una media volada y como... And people from Mexico that I met are like, wait, what? So, like, but that gives it a certain rhythm, and using those words as well, like, how do you, like, not manipulate, pero como tomas el ritmo y lo haces como propio? o para que se entienda. ¿Y si has mexicanizado alguna vez una obra o no?
Sí, he mexicanizado muchas. The thing that I do the most is adapting plays from English into Mexican Spanish. People ask me to do that a lot. One of the things that I've noticed works the most is sentence structure. A lot of people who translate from English to Spanish just translate exactly like the words exactly as they are in the line, like a chunk, yeah. And so that doesn't work in Mexican Spanish. So usually what works the most is switching them around to try to get that rhythm. Also, punctuation is a thing, because in English, you barely use commas. In Spanish, you separate ideas a bit more through commas, and in English, you don't. So that, and of course, when you're working with actors take a lot of hints from like the punctuation, the commas and the full stops. So how do you translate the feeling? Because sometimes when a character is speaking really, really fast because they're really excited or really frightened or really keen to get an idea across, how do you keep that but still keep the punctuation rules that work in Spanish? So that's always a question, like a big question to me. What I try to do is try to keep the closest I can to the original without it turning into something that is not Mexican. But yeah, the rhythm, Spanish is faster, I think, than English. It is faster. And swear words are so much better in Spanish as well. So much better. Insulting someone in Spanish is just so much more satisfying than it is in English.
When I went to Cuba to adapt Le Bercer, like I just said, there was this Mexican translation and an Argentinian translation that I could work with. And I said, the Argentinian one, like, I know how they think. I'm going to have to, like, rewrite the whole thing. Plus, there were some little cuts. Don't tell anybody. So I got the Mexican translation, and I had to make it Cuban. And we had to adapt it to the day before the revolution.
Oh, my God.
That was, like, the whole thing. So I got off a plane in Varadero. I took a bus to La Habana. Me subí un taxi. Llego a una sinagoga donde se está ensayando. Y están todas las actrices. And I'm like, hi, I just got off a plane. I need you to tell me every single curse word in Cuban that your mothers or grandmothers said, like right now, because we got to get to work. And it was so much fun.
That's amazing.
They were all like, why don't you just go sleep or like go have something to drink? And I was like, I need to get this done because it's so much. Like, and it's so much. When I translate to English though, I do enjoy doing curse words as well. Except that you don't really know the sensitivity around it.
What do you mean?
Porque si tú dices como, I'm just going to curse right now.
Yeah, go ahead.
Tú dices como, chinga tu madre. You can say like, go fuck yourself.
Right.
You can say like, fuck off. But you can also say things that are more polite or things that are way harsher.
That's true.
Hence, cursing is allowed. So in Spanish, like, when you translate English to Spanish cursing, it's so beautiful. It just adds so much rhythm. And I don't know many actors who don't like cursing on stage.
Actors
I'm not
love
an actor.
cursing on stage. Sometimes even like when I direct, I give notes, and a lot of the notes that I give are curse words, just because they're so much part of your body.
Como que, dame un ejemplo.
Como pendejear, ¿no? Te estás pendejeando a esta persona. So you're looking down on someone, but looking down on someone sounds like less interesting acting wise than pendejearse a alguien, ¿no?
Yeah, sí, no, like, nosotros acá, claro, le decías como, no sé, nota dirección, yo dirigí un poquito y es como, weón, deja que te huevee nomás, si te importa un pico la weá que está haciendo, eso tenés que hacer. It's like, for us, it's totally understandable. It's kind of like egg, you don't care a beak about what that egg is saying. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But, like, yeah, I don't know. Cursing is cool. Yeah, I don't know. I enjoy translating. I think it's like, I always say this though, it's like I get to like get inside someone's work, like under their hands or something. And I've noticed that like as a playwright, someone told me last night, because I'm applying to this funding. So I was like, can anybody read my new thing? And a friend of mine said, the last 3 things you translated like have totally started to change the way you write.
Wow.
And that was really interesting.
It's really
like,
true.
You're structured.
It feels like
it's yeah.
It's like a really intimate experience, because it's, yeah, reading a play or directing a play isn't nearly as intimate as making it go through you and then pour it back out. And it does, and you get a really, really close experience of someone else's rhythm and language. And even just how they arrange things on a page, I feel like I've stolen, like my format, the format that I'm happy with, I've stolen from all the different plays that I've translated, because that's a really cool idea, just like for organization. But yeah, I think it's really enriching for a playwright to translate, just because it's the closest you will ever get to something, and reading is not enough. Translating is just so much more intimate. I was wondering, because I struggled, we're doing Hannah Moskovich's little one, Bichito, here, and we struggled. There's always a struggle in translating when a word isn't enough to cover, word in Spanish or in English isn't enough to cover the original meaning. And it's always like, I feel like I'm always mourning for the things that I can't put into the page. So like, how do you handle that, not being able to find the exact translation of something?
Well, first thing, I saw Bichito, please watch it. It's fantastic. You did something very interesting because you directed it, and that play, the main action for the actors is basically telling a story somehow.
Yeah.
And recreating little moments, which is a playwriting structure that is really hard to do well, and it has like nice twists. But they were talking to cameras. So that added like so many layers that you could like, maybe what you're like frustrated about, you got away with it, you know?
Hopefully.
But I kind of think that there's a moment that one has to lose respect for the piece, because it's not the same play. Like, it's impossible. There's that phrase in Italian, which is traduttore traditore, which all translators are every translator betrays.
Is there not a word for traidor in English?
Of course there is. I'm just like, no sé.
What's the word? Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I'm not going to Google it, but I'd say betrayal because I've been reading Pinter lately and whatever. Right. But that thing of like translating the piece is more like, this is an act of love at the end of the day. I'm translating this play either because I love the money that I'm getting paid, and we never get paid good money to translate plays anyway. No. It's because we love doing it, and I think we want to like transmit it. And I have some choices sometimes that are like, ugh. But then I also work with actors a lot, and I get them to read, and things won't make sense to them, and voy como integrar las cosas que me dicen.
Claro, sí.
But sometimes you just have to trust that you're doing a terrible job,
and be okay with that.
and be okay with it. Like, it's not, you know what I mean? And there's just some piece. The puzzle is never going to look perfect. If it's your own work, you see someone else's translation, you're like, every single
beautiful,
piece
it's perfect, yeah.
But that person is not going to think that unless they're a narcissist.
It's true. Because
it's an impossible dream or task, and I think we have to like answer questions.
Yeah, we do.
Que intenta hablar contigo. Está bueno.
Let's hang out in person. We should. It's not enough time. Hola, Angie.
Hola. I have to say, this conversation could go for hours, and I could just watch you and listen to this amazing conversation of language. But we do have some questions from Courtney herself. One of the questions is, I'll go in Spanish, and then I'll do it in a translation into English, and then I'll do it into Spanish. So the question is, how do stage directions work when you're doing a translation? Y para los que están aquí en español, la pregunta es, ¿cómo funciona la dirección del escenario cuando estás escribiendo las instrucciones para los actores
Las acotaciones.
Las acotaciones, gracias. ¿Cómo funcionan las acotaciones cuando se está haciendo una traducción?
You translate. I guess it's like the least difficult part of. Like sometimes stage directions are really elaborate. Like Tennessee Williams has these massive paragraphs where he's explaining everything, but I guess it's since no one's going to be saying them, I feel like they're not that hard to translate. You just translate directly as much as you can, and then the director will decide what they do with them, I think. Or what do you think, Bruce?
Para mí, yo creo que... Okay, so let's talk about, this is a myth, I haven't seen it, but Mr. Richard Rose, the artistic director of the Tarragon, I hear that he grabs a marker and he kind of like erases stage directions sometimes when he works. Okay. I've heard that, which is interesting. And throughout my life, I've met other people like that who do that. I don't know if he still does it or if it's just a rumor. Sounds really cool anyway. Must be frustrating for some playwrights. Pero creo que cuando las acotaciones son muy poéticas o hay poquitas, es más difícil. Cuando hay acotaciones como camina para acá, va para allá, recoge esto, etc., es más fácil. O también like these texts that are like, I haven't done, well, that are more like on the, as would kid with my friends, like on the German side. Just like one block of like text. And like Bambilandia, I don't know if you know Bambilandia, but it's like a novel basically. I don't know. And then you really have to be kind of careful. As a playwright, I like to make como las didascalias que sean muy bonitas, como just to give people something to work with.
And also, like sometimes even some playwrights add a bit of a sense of humor into like the playwright's voice. Sometimes you can find it in the set directions, the stage directions.
Exit chased by a bear is a typical example, right?
Exactly.
Great, thank you for answering that. We're going to move on to a question from Christine Quintana. So the question in English is, when translating works across different countries, what is your process around translating or adapting specific racial or socio-political contexts? It's a great question that I'm going to translate into Spanish in real time. So, cuando estás traduciendo una obra de teatro que va a ir a diferentes países, ¿cuál es el proceso que ustedes tienen para traducir y adaptar cosas específicas como raza o contextos sociopolíticos? Esa es la pregunta.
Parto yo, porque we do...
Sí,
so I translated this play called The Christians by Lucas Nath. He did A Doll's House Part 2. I think that they've done that one in Canada. And it's about, sorry, I have a little tick. Mega church in the southern US, which is why I had also asked you about southern US. And there's a gospel choir. So in Chile, racially, percentages are very, very low when it doesn't come to como gente morena y gente blanca. It's pretty homogeneous in a way. Until like 5 years ago, there wasn't much migration. So now there's a lot of people como de Haití, de Colombia, pero antes en general como la población negra de Chile era mínima. Entonces es muy sorprendente porque uno va a otros países de Latinoamérica y claro, la gente no, es muy, muy raro. Uruguay es bastante similar, Argentina, les empezó a pasar esto hace poco, y lo cual ha traído millones de problemas y muchas cosas. Y entonces la idea como having like a gospel choir, like in the south of the States, etc., in Chile or Argentina, where I want them to call me so they can do the show, is interesting. So we actually, you have to do a little bit of research and you have to do a little bit of, I would say like a little analysis regarding ethics of representation. why are we especially based on the question of why are we doing this and for whom? It's like, we're not just doing a fun play from the States and there's a gospel choir. So we actually took it in the direction of Chilean evangelical churches, which Latin America has this whole thing with evangelical churches. And we took it in that direction. So we also worked the language towards that place. So it didn't feel in a way kind of like we're just brushing things off, or we're like appropriating, reverse appropriation, or I don't know if that's a concept, but things like that. I think there's like a ethical question that has to be really well thought out and talked about. Like, I don't think one can make those decisions by oneself. Yeah.
It's interesting because it's, yeah, kind of like racial issues in Latin America, I think, in Mexico at least, are kind of, people sometimes will go as far as saying there's no racism here, where there's so much of it. And we did this play a few years ago, David Lindsay Bear's Good People, Buenas Personas. And it's a play about class and racial issues. It's not really racial issues in the English version, in Chicago, I think. And we translated it into a Mexican, we made it into a Mexican thing, really like probably Mexican. And we did turn it into a racial thing. So we had characters who were darker skinned versus characters who weren't. And this whole like social class battle. It's a really beautiful, interesting play. But there was a feeling, at least when you sat in the theater and you were surrounded by white Mexicans, where it was interesting to have that experience of translating and turning into a play that talked about racism in Mexico and class issues in Mexico, but then staging it in front of an audience who are the only people who can pay for that was a bit of like, at least caused some dissonance in me at least, because then who are we translating and adapting these plays for? Is it only for the people who can pay for them? How much of an impact does it have in that on those people? And wouldn't it be more interesting to have it be a more open experience? So that is also one of the things that I kind of worry about or ask myself is, yeah, we're translating these plays and then we're staging them in front of only a very, very, very small number of people and a very specific segment of people. So that's something that we, at least in Mexico, we're trying to work around and that I'm trying to wrap my head around is who we're translating for. And I don't have an answer for that. That's kind of like what worries me sometimes with translation.
It's part of the process as we all continue to grow as countries and as people. Thank you. We're going to move on to Monica Garrido. Her question in English. Oh, hello, we know Monica, great. Her question is, how do you translate into general Spanish, which we all know. We know there's a general type Spanish, with trying to keep also the sense of where the character is from. And says like, como digamos, haces un personaje muy mexicano en un español más como neutral para una audiencia que habla español. So, yeah, la pregunta es en español, ¿cómo traduces una obra para que sea en un español más general, para que todos podamos entender si es que somos de Ecuador, Chile, México, pero que igual mantenga esa identidad si es que el personaje es mexicano?
Quizá Bruce, que lo acaba de hacer.
Pues yo cierro los ojos, enciendo una velita e invoco todas las telenovelas latinoamericanas que he visto en mi vida, todas las películas dobladas al español, todas las series mexicanas de infancia, Chapulín Colorado, Chavo del Ocho, puedo continuar, Carrusel de las Américas, Carrusel Normal, y busco ese como balance entre lo doblado, lo común, las teleseries brasileras que las neutralizan al español, que ayudan mucho. Eso es una cosa cultural simplemente, pero solo calibrar ese tema del doblaje con lo mexicano para Latinoamérica, porque México es el país hegemónico culturalmente, como en el cono sur de Sudamérica es Argentina. Son países donde hay mucho teatro, donde hay mucha cultura, donde hay mucha televisión, donde hay mucho Luis Miguel, no sé, estoy inventando, no sé por qué me sé Luis Miguel. Tengo otros que prefiero más, José. Así que... Claro, yo creo que va por ahí. Yo creo que es el acceso de ese tipo para mí.
Eso es muy interesante, claro, tener referencias de todas las otras situaciones en las que ha sido necesario eso. Nunca me ha pasado tener que traducir algo para un español muy neutral. Bueno, el zoológico de cristal sí lo hicimos así, se podría haber entendido en cualquier lado, pero no con la idea de que se hiciera en cualquier lado, nada más fue que sucedió así.
Sí. O sea, también hay palabras que funcionan en ciertos países como, o sea, o tienen diferentes significados, como ustedes decían antes. Yo sé que hay ciertas cosas que decimos en Ecuador que no podemos decir en Colombia de la misma forma porque es otro tipo de horas. Estamos hablando de otra cosa. Entonces, bueno. Ahora tenemos otra pregunta. Tenemos 4 minutos, así que veamos. Rosa Laborde pregunta. Well, first she's saying, this is wonderful, you too. And she says, I'm very curious about your process for handling alliteration and also how you handle languages specific wordplay. So, a ver, la traducción en español sería ¿cómo, cuál es el proceso para manejar aliteración? ¿No es cierto? En español también es aliteración, que es un poquito más poético para los que tal vez es a little more poetic.
Tengo un ejemplo.
Perfecto. So that's the question.
I'm going to start really quickly because this was a conversation, I believe, that we had in the Tadoussac residency, Players Workshop Montreal, working with Leo. And the lead dramaturg was like, how do you work alliteration? And I heard alliteration, but I started talking about something else. And everybody was like, okay, Bruce, whatever, you're weird, which is true. Pero como un ejemplo de aliteración en español sería, aquí busqué, Pablo es paciente y pacífico. El gato de Gabriela no tiene ganas de comer, right? Mm-hmm. So, cuando tienes algo en inglés que tiene esa estructura, Pablo es paciente y pacífico. Pablo is patient and a pacifist could work really well, but it's not very common. And what do you do if you find the right word, but it doesn't serve the image? I think it's the same for wordplay. And I think it's a bit about doing your best in a way and giving it a lot of thought. Yeah.
Sometimes it works that you're trying to be true to the actual meaning of the thing. And sometimes it works finding a different kind of alliteration. So maybe it's not with a P, but maybe k sound works better with the words that match better in English. So what I try to do is, okay, if that specific word doesn't work for the alliteration, I'll try to go for a different one. And if that doesn't work, then I'll try to find some kind of assonance in the words that I am using, maybe in the vowels or something, to try to keep some of that rhythm. It can be done, like it can be, it's really hard, and it's kind of getting your head over the obstacle is the bigger part of the problem. But once you're on the other side of it and you go like, okay, so this is a meaning, and then what words do I have that have the same meaning and have the same sound? So it's really technical. Half of the time I'm on Word Reference and thesaurus.com and oxforddictionaries.com, and you're just like trying to figure out what the best words are for that.
It's like a Sudoku sometimes.
Yeah.
And when you're working with verse, I worked on this adaptation of Clear, which is like super modern and super like feminist, incest. It was amazing. But the images and the verse, like the wordplay was exquisite. And it was the same situation of like, how do you find, and I was in a long time, there's this thing called Lingui, .s, where you find write it down. It's good. You write down, for example, conversation with panelists, for example, and it'll find all the translations people have done on the internet. Let's say conversation panelists, but they're not all correct. So it's a gamble but when you're trying to find something, sometimes it'll click and it'll tell you.
That's a really good idea.
And sometimes it's like, this is totally not right, but it brings you like the answer of like, like the answer de lo que está correcto un poco. Yeah.
O diccionario de rimas works as well. And you can consonant and assonant in, that's a really helpful resource as well. Oh, we're winding down, I think.
So.
So like the last question, I guess, that we have time for. Thank you for answering everything so far. Can you tell us more about any of your upcoming projects that you'd like to share and invite people to, of course? Y para en español, ¿cuáles son sus proyectos en el futuro que quieran compartir con nosotros? Cuéntenos, ¿qué están haciendo? ¿Qué van a hacer?
Well, we have Bichito right now. It's on Tuesdays at 8:30 Central Standard Time, and anyone can see it basically because it's live streamed. So people from Canada have joined in.
Spanish, right? And on
Tuesdays, it's in Spanish. It's in Spanish, so it's for Spanish speakers. Unless you know Hannah's little one really well, then I think you could kind of sort of work your way around it. And soon, I don't know when, we'll be doing Tiny Beautiful Things, and it'll also be a hybrid version. So it'll be via streaming and with an audience in the theater. So if people in Canada are interested in that as well, we could send you a link when it's up.
Yes, please. Always do.
And we will have El Hilador, the Orb Weaver, a filmed version, which I know a lot of people in Canada enjoyed. That'll be in Spanish, but again, for any Spanish speakers out there, we'll make the link available. I think it'll be available in Canada as well when it's out.
Great, thank you. The Orb Weaver, I want to say again to everybody, is one of my favorite plays of all time. Bruce.
What am I doing? I'm translating a bunch of interviews and excerpts of plays by Chilean playwrights. We had some panel discussions kind of like this with HowlRound and UPenn during the past weeks. We may do some again. And they are on Interdram, as in international, and then drama, interdram.cl. And if you click English, you can actually find the interviews in English and the excerpts. Done in very, very short time. So the translations may not be perfect. I don't know, I'm translating a lot of film and TV right now for Amazon, but like for internal confidential producer stuff, which is really funny. And sometime in the next year, sooner than later, we are working on an online version of my play, The Communist Manifesto for Children, which will be in English and Spanish, because it is a bilingual play. And I'll make it like surtitled as well, so a Spanish speaker can see it, a non-Spanish speaker can see it as well, and it's kind of the same experience. So also, you know, being able to showcase it in Canada and in Chile, and we're working on some production things here and there because we had to reimagine the project. Hashtag COVID. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Well, please keep us on the loop so that we can share it with everybody that we know, all your projects, everything you're doing. Gracias. Thank you so much. I'm going to take it to Daniel and Courtney, who are back here. And it's been, if I may say personally, it's been amazing to listen to both of you. I think we should all hang out and continue later. Yeah.
We should.
Thank you so much for all of your lovely knowledge and laughter for the past hour. It's been such a fantastic afternoon.
I need to learn Spanish so that I can watch Shrek and The Simpsons in Spanish.
Oh,
that is now my life.
Do it.
If you think Eddie Murphy is funny as a donkey, just wait.
Just wait.
What's his name? What's the comedian?
I don't know if in Chile you had Derbez, Eugenio Derbez, yeah.
Derbez, he's amazing. He's so funny as the donkey. I'm so glad you said that because I've always said it all my life and nobody believes me. It is funnier.
It is funnier.
Thank you so much to our attendees for coming and for your fantastic questions. We're so grateful to have spent this time with you. If you're tuning in for Leo in Spanish, it starts in 26 minutes. It goes live, but you can listen to it whenever you want in the next hour. Not next hour. You can listen to it whenever you want in a week. 2 weeks.
For 2 weeks. Yeah.
There it is.
2 weeks. And there's a link right here in the chat to Leo, and also a link to the Caltech website. And I particularly encourage, if you are a Latinx artist or if you know Latinx artists, to make contact with Caltech.
Great. That's it.
Okay. Oh, and just so you know, we also are keeping a recording. Is this true? A recording of this fantastic discussion, which will be available on the website, the page for Leo. So if you have a question and want to revisit it, or want to direct some colleagues or friends to listen to it, they'll be able to find it there. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Gracias. Bye.